What if I told you that everything you believed was untrue? For a long time, many renowned researchers and historians held a completely different view. They sincerely believed that the unique culture of these peoples depended solely on unpredictable climatic cycles. Scientists attributed all changes in their harsh way of life to prolonged droughts or long, harsh winters. But the true reason for their unprecedented historical flourishing lay elsewhere. It lay in an incredibly complex and well-thought-out system of a unique nomadic economy. A true drama unfolded across the endless green expanses from the turbulent Missouri River to the majestic Rocky Mountains. Here, a grand story of human adaptation to the new conditions of wild and harsh nature was unfolding. The local inhabitants learned to masterfully utilize every available resource of their rich land. People learned to preserve food for months in advance to survive the winter without loss. Each tribe made its own important contribution to this vast system of survival on the plains. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how the transformation of the main source of resources forced the tribes of the Great Plains to completely restructure their traditional way of life. What was found in old archives completely changes our understanding of the logistics of nomadic peoples. The lives of the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Comanche tribes revolved around constant movement in pursuit of their primary sources of food and materials. Huge camps moved across the plains with clockwork precision, adjusting every step according to the season. Understanding seasonal routes allowed communities to make long-term plans a year in advance. The entire material world of the Plains native peoples depended on the successful gathering of resources during long expeditions. The frames for dwellings were made from young trees, but the primary covering consisted of dense animal-derived materials. To create a single traditional teepee, more than a dozen carefully processed hides had to be sewn together. This work required the highest level of craftsmanship and knowledge of specialized tanning techniques. The process of treating the collected materials took weeks of continuous labor in specially organized camps. The hides were cleaned using bone scrapers, which were made from large ribs and tubular bones. The material was then soaked for a long time and stretched on wooden frames in the open air. This made the leather soft and elastic, ideal for sewing clothing and creating portable dwellings. Tools for daily life were also made from materials gathered on the plains. Spoons, ladles, and parts for complex composite bows were carved from sturdy horns. Tendons were turned into incredibly strong threads used to sew clothing and fasten structural elements. Even hooves found a use, serving as the basis for natural glue. Transporting such a vast amount of goods required special engineering solutions suited to the steppe landscape. People used a special device called a travois, consisting of two long poles joined in the shape of the letter A. Heavy loads were placed on this structure, after which it was pulled along through the tall grass. The travois allowed entire settlements to be moved tens of kilometers in a single day. The interior layout of the teepee was characterized by strict functionality and the rational use of every square meter. In the center was a hearth lined with stones, the smoke from which escaped through a special opening at the top of the cone. Sleeping areas were arranged along the walls, covered with warm blankets and protected from drafts by internal screens. All belongings were stored in special leather bags that could be easily hung on a wooden frame. Winter camps were usually located in low-lying areas or wooded sections, sheltered from the biting winds. During this time, the tribe's activity decreased, and people devoted their days to repairing equipment and crafting new tools. Craftsmen carved new arrow shafts, refurbished bone arrowheads, and repaired horse harnesses. This was a period of preparation for the coming warm season and future large-scale migrations. Constant nomadism shaped a unique rhythm of life that tolerated no excess baggage or bulky structures. Every household item had to be lightweight, durable, and multifunctional for ease of transport. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world and where you're watching from. Share your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about how large-scale nomadic expeditions were planned on the Great Plains? Gathering the entire tribe for a joint journey required perfect coordination among scattered groups. Leaders of various communities agreed in advance on the meeting place and time through special messengers. These messengers covered enormous distances, navigating by the sun and natural landmarks. The gathering place was always chosen based on the availability of fresh water and sufficient grass for the horses. River valleys became ideal sites for setting up temporary settlements. Thousands of people could gather in such camps, arranging their tents in neat concentric circles. The strict order of the dwellings prevented confusion and maintained discipline within the vast settlement. The management of a large-scale camp fell to special military societies that served as a police force. They ensured that no one left the camp without permission or violated the established order. Violators of the strict rules faced severe punishment, including public censure and the destruction of personal property. Discipline was the key to the success of the entire upcoming expedition and a guarantee of the tribe's survival. Before the start of the journey, complex ceremonies were held to unite the people and prepare them for the hard work ahead. The route was discussed in councils, where experienced trackers shared their observations on the condition of the prairies. They analyzed wind directions, river water levels, and the state of vegetation for hundreds of miles around. Based on this data, a final decision was made regarding the direction of travel for the entire vast camp. Breaking camp took place with astonishing speed and resembled a well-rehearsed mechanism. In just an hour, hundreds of teepees were taken down, and belongings were packed into leather trunks and secured to the travois. The column of people and horses stretched for several kilometers, slowly moving across the endless steppe. Scouts always led the way, checking the path for obstacles and selecting the best spots for the next campsite. The column's movement was governed by strict safety rules developed over years of nomadic life. On the flanks and in the rear guard were detachments of experienced horsemen, ready at any moment to defend the tribe. During the treks, people communicated using a system of visual signals to avoid making unnecessary noise. On sunny days, the use of mirrors allowed information to be transmitted over vast distances in a matter of seconds. Crossing rivers was one of the most difficult stages of any large-scale expedition. Special boats, made of a willow frame and covered with thick leather, were used to transport cargo. These round vessels possessed incredible buoyancy and could withstand the considerable weight of equipment. Horses crossed water obstacles on their own, guided by the shouts of experienced herders from the shore. Arrival in the designated area marked the beginning of a new phase in the life of the nomadic community. The camp was set up anew with the same precision and organization as when breaking camp from the previous site. People began preparing for a large-scale gathering of resources, checking their equipment and recovering their strength after the journey. Each family knew its duties, which allowed them to quickly establish daily life at the new encampment. The success of the expedition depended entirely on the coordinated actions of thousands of people and their ability to follow common rules. These massive migrations demonstrated the highest level of social organization among the tribes of the Great Plains. What coordination methods do you think are the most reliable for such large-scale migrations? In the next chapter, you'll learn the secret, one people pay thousands for, that reveals the unique technologies of the steppe craftsman. The secret, passed down from generation to generation, has finally been revealed by researchers of ancient Great Plains technologies. The mastery of Native American artisans lay in their ability to use a limited set of materials to create durable products. The process of tanning leather was a true chemical art, perfected over centuries of continuous practice. The masters used natural ingredients, including wood ash and plant extracts, to impart special properties to the material. Dyeing the finished products required a deep knowledge of local flora and minerals. A rich red color was obtained from the juice of certain berries, while yellow and blue pigments were created from crushed stones. The dyes were applied to the leather using porous bones or special brushes made from stiff steppe grass. These designs not only adorned the clothing, but also served as a kind of passport, telling the story of a specific family. Making clothing was a lengthy process requiring extreme concentration and precision in cutting. Native American tailors did not use patterns in the modern sense, relying instead on visual estimation and years of experience. They sewed pieces of leather together so that the seams were barely visible and completely waterproof. Finished shirts and leggings were often decorated with intricate embroidery made from carefully dyed quills of the wild porcupine. Working with bone and horn constituted a separate, highly valued branch of craftsmanship. The hard material was boiled for hours in boiling water until it became pliable enough to be cut and bent. The softened horn was shaped into elegant forms for ladles and sturdy components for horse harnesses. Once cooled, the item permanently retained its shape and became incredibly strong. Building wooden frames for teepees required finding straight, long trunks of specific tree species. The pines growing in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains were ideal for this purpose due to their exceptional straightness. The wood was carefully stripped of its bark and dried in the sun for a long time to prevent warping in the future. The finished poles were cherished like the apple of one's eye and carefully passed down from generation to generation. The technology for storing food was no less complex than the processes of harvesting or processing it. To protect supplies from rodents and dampness, special caches were dug deep into dry ground. The walls of these pits were lined with stones and dry grass, creating a natural and reliable insulating layer. A stable microclimate was maintained inside, allowing supplies to remain edible for many months. Basket and mat weaving was another important aspect of the material culture of the Plains tribes. Women gathered flexible willow twigs and long stems of marsh grasses along the banks of freshwater rivers. From this raw material, they created sturdy mats for the tepee floor and spacious baskets for carrying goods. The geometric patterns on these woven items often echoed motifs used in embroidery and painting. The unique techniques of the steppe artisans allowed them to create a comfortable life in the wild. Every item was thought out down to the smallest detail and served its purpose flawlessly for many years. Preserving this artisanal knowledge was a top priority for the older generation of nomadic communities. If you found this fact new and informative, be sure to like this video. I'm going to reveal the best-kept secret of North America's ancient trade routes. The Great Plains were not an isolated region, but rather a vast crossroads of intertribal trade. Nomadic peoples constantly exchanged resources with sedentary tribes living along major waterways. This exchange system allowed all participants to access goods that were not available in their own territories. Sedentary tribes grew corn, beans, and squash on the fertile lands near river valleys. Nomads brought them beautifully tanned hides, warm clothing, and high-quality protein supplies. The meeting places of these different cultures turned into bustling fairs that lasted for several long weeks. Here, not only trade deals were made, but also important political alliances between tribal leaders. The value of goods was determined by their rarity and the difficulty of production in a specific geographic region. Certain types of stone, suitable for making durable arrowheads and cutting tools, were in high demand. This stone was often mined in distant quarries and passed along the trade chain from one tribe to another. Thus, materials could travel thousands of kilometers from their place of origin. With the arrival of Europeans on the continent, trade routes underwent significant changes and expanded rapidly. Glass beads, metal kettles, and high-quality industrially manufactured cloth entered circulation. These new goods quickly became symbols of high status and wealth among the leaders of nomadic communities. Indigenous artisans began actively using beads to decorate traditional clothing, creating new artistic styles. However, the new trade relations also brought unforeseen problems for the indigenous peoples. Dependence on factory-made goods gradually eroded traditional crafts and ancient survival technologies. Many tribes began to alter their traditional way of life in order to gain permanent access to trading posts. This led to a sharp shift in the balance of power on the Great Plains and intensified competition for resources. Trading posts established by European companies became new centers of attraction for many remote tribes. Here, nomads could exchange their goods for metal tools and other items of great practical use. The companies strictly controlled prices and product selection, seeking to maximize their commercial profit from these exchanges. Such policies often led to serious tensions and conflicts between traders and indigenous peoples. The development of trade routes required the protection of valuable caravans from possible attacks by rival groups. Tribes assigned special detachments of experienced horsemen to guard cargo during long journeys across the prairies. These guards had excellent orientation skills in open terrain and were able to spot any potential threat in time. The security of trade routes was the main guarantee of economic prosperity for the entire nomadic community. The Great Plains Trade Network demonstrated the indigenous people's remarkable capacity for adaptation and economic planning. The constant exchange of goods and ideas contributed to the cultural enrichment of all participants in this large-scale process. How effective do you think this system of mutually beneficial resource exchange was? In the next chapter, you will learn how global climate change began to infiltrate the traditional way of life of indigenous peoples. The natural conditions of the Great Plains were never entirely stable, undergoing constant cyclical changes. Periods of heavy rainfall were regularly followed by long droughts, which completely transformed the appearance of the endless prairies. The grass, which served as the staple food for vast herds of herbivores, would wither under the scorching sun in a matter of weeks. This forced the inhabitants of the plains to constantly adjust their routes in search of green pastures and fresh water. Harsh winters also imposed their own severe disruptions on the familiar rhythm of life for all nomadic communities. Snowstorms could last for days, burying camps and cutting off access to their usual sources of fuel. During such periods, the tribe's survival depended entirely on the quality of their pre-stocked supplies and the sturdiness of their teepees. People gathered around the hearths, conserving every log and every handful of dried food. Spring floods posed yet another serious natural threat to the inhabitants of river valleys. Torrential streams of water, formed by the melting of snow in the mountains, would instantly burst their banks, flooding the lowlands. Camps had to be hurriedly moved to higher ground, resulting in the loss of some valuable property and equipment. The ability to predict the weather based on cloud patterns and wind direction was a critically important survival skill. The spread of new species of hardy plants also altered the ecosystem of the Great Plains over the course of many centuries. The emergence of such vegetation forced herbivores to shift their habitual habitats in search of better forage. People whose economy depended entirely on these biological resources were forced to migrate in their wake. This chain reaction led to an inevitable redistribution of territories among various nomadic tribes. Forest fires, often caused by lightning strikes, played a dual role in the life of the prairies. On the one hand, they destroyed vegetation over vast areas, depriving the inhabitants of food for an entire season. On the other hand, the ash served as excellent fertilizer, and by the following year, the scorched earth was covered with lush greenery. The Native Americans learned to harness this natural process by intentionally burning small areas to renew their pastures. Gradual climate change in the 19th century led to an increase in extreme and unpredictable weather events. Prolonged droughts became increasingly lengthy, depleting the scarce water resources of entire regions. Dried-up riverbeds altered the traditional route maps that had been established over many decades. Nomads had to settle in new, often less favorable territories to maintain their way of life. The climate also affected the quality of materials used for construction and sewing warm clothing. In dry years, harvested raw materials became thin and brittle, which greatly complicated the processing. Wood for teepee frames dried faster but became more fragile and vulnerable to strong gusts of wind. Craftsmen had to urgently adapt their techniques to the changing characteristics of the available natural materials. The geography of the plains also underwent visual changes due to soil erosion and the activity of strong river currents. New deep ravines and canyons formed, becoming natural obstacles in the path of nomadic migrations. People carefully studied these changes in the landscape, recording them on their detailed oral maps of the area. Accurate knowledge of the current terrain was essential for the safe movement of huge caravans carrying their belongings. Thus, nature itself dictated harsh conditions for all inhabitants of the North American continent. The tribes of the Great Plains demonstrated remarkable flexibility, adapting to the whims of climate and terrain. Their ability to survive in such a dynamic environment was based on a deep understanding of ecological relationships. This knowledge was carefully preserved and passed down to younger generations as the people's highest treasure. What large companies and official reports of the time conceal opens a new chapter in history. In the mid-19th century, the Great Plains ceased to be the undisputed domain of free nomadic tribes. The arrival of thousands of wagons carrying new settlers permanently disrupted the familiar balance of power in this vast region. Caravans of settlers moved relentlessly along ancient Indian trails, carving out wide, dusty roads to the west. This unending stream of people and heavy wagons required a colossal amount of resources to sustain itself. Settlers cut down forests along riverbanks, destroying vital supplies of valuable timber for the nomads. They polluted sources of clean water and trampled the pastures necessary to sustain the Native American horses. The familiar infrastructure of the plains, maintained for centuries by indigenous peoples, began to rapidly collapse under external pressure. The construction of steel railroads became yet another powerful factor in the transformation of the familiar prairie landscape. Railroad lines cut the endless prairies into pieces, disrupting natural seasonal migration routes. The noise of locomotives and the appearance of new stations drove the native wildlife far from its familiar habitats. The tribes were forced to move their encampments farther and farther into barren areas, ceding the fertile lands to the newcomers. Along with the settlers, entirely new technologies for farming and livestock raising arrived on the plains. Vast tracts of land were fenced off with barbed wire, permanently blocking free access to the best water sources. This wire became a symbol of the end of a long era of free nomadism and the beginning of the era of private land ownership. Open spaces rapidly shrank, confining nomadic tribes within new, rigid geographical boundaries. New settlers built permanent, bustling cities with developed infrastructure and sturdy stone buildings. These stationary settlements stood in stark contrast to the mobile teepee camps, reflecting a completely different approach to life. The emergence of cities led to the creation of new markets and a shift in the traditional trade routes across the plains. The indigenous people were gradually drawn into this new economic system, losing their former complete independence. The mass resettlement was accompanied by the signing of numerous official treaties that strictly limited the tribe's territories. The borders drawn on paper in distant offices often completely disregarded the actual geography and the needs of the nomads. Many tribes suddenly found themselves cut off from their sacred sites and traditional sheltered winter camps. This sparked a deep sense of injustice and forced people to seek new, hidden ways to adapt. Under these harsh conditions, the tribes had to completely rethink their political alliances and survival strategies. Some leaders attempted to establish peaceful coexistence with their new neighbors by exchanging available goods and information. Others preferred to retreat to the most remote and inaccessible corners of the plains in an attempt to preserve their independence. The choice of strategy depended on a multitude of factors and often led to painful divisions within the tribes themselves. This period became a time of the most severe historical trials for the unique culture and economy of the peoples of the Great Plains. The traditional way of life was cracking at the seams under the pressure of industrial civilization and unprecedented demographic pressure. How quickly could the traditional way of life adapt to such radical changes in the environment? The next chapter will explore how the tribes altered their migration routes in the new reality. The restriction of available territories forced the tribes of the Great Plains to completely rethink their ancient logistical strategies. Traditional circular routes, spanning hundreds of kilometers of open prairies, were now interrupted by fences and new towns. The nomads were forced to devise shorter and safer routes between scarce water sources and pastures. This required a profound rethinking of the region's geography and a search for natural oases hidden from prying eyes. The high foothills and rugged rocky terrain became new centers of attraction for many tribes. In these hard-to-reach places, pockets of untouched nature and supplies of essential resources still remained. In addition, the rugged terrain provided natural protection from unwanted attention and direct outside interference. People had to relearn how to survive in harsher conditions that demanded greater physical endurance and caution. Settlements became smaller and more scattered across the entire territory available for movement. Instead of huge, noisy camps consisting of hundreds of teepees, tribes began to divide into small, highly mobile groups. Such compact settlements were much easier to feed and significantly easier to conceal in the folds of the rugged terrain. This division required the creation of fundamentally new systems of communication and coordination between isolated Native American families. The reduction in the distances traveled during their nomadic journeys led to a change in the role of horses in the tribe's daily routine. Although horses remained the most important means of transportation, the size of the herds had to be significantly and necessarily reduced. The shortage of available pasture land made keeping a large number of horses an unaffordable luxury for most families. People began to use small transport carts more often, which even dogs could pull, as in ancient times. Navigating in these new confined conditions required even greater attention to small details and landmarks. Avoiding the settlers' wide roads, the Indians carved out hidden trails along the beds of dried-up rivers and through wooded ravines. Knowledge of these secret paths became the main tactical advantage of the tribe's experienced trackers and scouts. This valuable knowledge was passed down strictly within the community and carefully guarded from any prying eyes. Access to the usual materials for repairing teepees and making warm clothing also became significantly more difficult. Long-distance expeditions for specific types of durable wood or rare stone became practically impossible due to the new borders. Craftsmen had to seek adequate substitutes for their usual materials in their immediate surroundings, displaying true wonders of ingenuity. The quality of the items produced often declined, but their functionality remained at the level necessary for basic survival. Interaction with sedentary tribes also underwent significant changes due to the destruction of the old trade routes. Traditional barter fairs began to be held much less frequently, and the range of goods offered for exchange dwindled considerably. Nomads had to independently master certain complex skills of settled life to somehow compensate for the shortage of food. Some mobile groups began to create small, secret gardens in sheltered valleys, growing hardy crops. Winter campsites were now set up with maximum stealth and strict resource conservation in mind. Dwellings were carefully hidden in dense thickets along narrow streams where they could not be seen from a distance. They tried to disperse the smoke from their hearths using special screens so as not to reveal their location to passing travelers. Survival during the long winter had become a true art of camouflage and the strictest conservation of all supplies. The transformation of nomadic routes was an absolutely necessary measure, dictated by the rapid shrinking of open prairie space. The tribes demonstrated an incredible will to survive, flexibly adapting their complex logistics to new territorial constraints. This historical period was characterized by a transition from an expansive economy to an economy of harsh survival in small, enclosed territories. Despite all the hardships that befell them, the core of traditional culture continued to thrive in these small, masterfully concealed camps. Changes in the availability of basic resources inevitably led to a radical restructuring of the daily lives of indigenous peoples. The shortage of traditional durable materials forced craftsmen to constantly seek new engineering solutions to maintain the comfort of their dwellings. Instead of heavy single-piece hides for covering teepees, complex combinations of various pieces of leather and lightweight fabrics were increasingly used. Heavy canvas, purchased at trading posts, became a popular substitute for materials that required lengthy tanning. The new fabric teepees were significantly lighter than traditional leather ones, which made them much easier to transport during frequent moves. However, these walls retained heat much less effectively during snowy winters and got wet much faster in heavy cold rain. To effectively solve this problem, people created additional internal insulation layers from old blankets and dry grass. The ingenuity of Native American women allowed them to reliably retain heat in their dwellings, even when using non-standard and unfamiliar materials. Their diet also changed, having been based for centuries and generations exclusively on the products of successful nomadic hunting. The reduced availability of familiar resources forced the tribes to turn their attention to smaller game and plant-based foods. Wild roots, berries, and seeds came into active use, and gathering them on a regular basis began to take much more time. People relearned how to make the most of those natural resources of the prairies that had previously always been considered purely secondary. The everyday clothing of Native Americans also underwent significant visual and structural changes during this transitional period. Traditional heavy leather shirts were increasingly replaced by comfortable, ready-made garments made of soft cotton and warm wool. Local craftswomen began actively using bright glass beads instead of dyed porcupine quills for intricate garment decoration. New geometric patterns and elegant embroidery techniques reflected the inevitable influence of European aesthetics on traditional applied arts. Free access to new materials allowed for the creation of more complex and incredibly colorful elements of horse tack. Wide leather saddles were lavishly decorated with shiny brass studs and bright, voluminous woolen tassels. Such rich decoration openly demonstrated the horse owner's status and personal success in the new complex economic realities. Horse gear became a very important element of cultural self-identification in a rapidly and irrevocably changing industrial world. The problem of reliably preserving supplies became more acute due to the need for more frequent travel and the instability of food sources. Dried pemmican remained a reliable staple of emergency rations, but its traditional composition began to gradually change. New high-calorie ingredients made available by active trade, such as cane sugar or dried fruit, were added to the nutrient mixture. Heavy airtight leather bags gave way to lighter, nailed-together wooden boxes and spacious canvas sacks. Tribal medical practices were also forced to adapt to the emergence of entirely new diseases and severe injuries. Traditional healers closely studied the properties of newly available plants and attempted to combine them with their ancient, extensive knowledge. However, many ancient herbal recipes proved utterly powerless in the face of unfamiliar and aggressive external infections. This sometimes forced people in desperation to seek qualified help from doctors in nearby settlements or army forts. Significant changes also affected the ways in which important information was preserved and transmitted within the tribe and between communities. Symbols on tanned hides, which told family stories, began to be drawn using factory-made paints and graphite pencils. Entirely new symbols emerged, representing long railroads, wagons, and other elements of the new reality around them. The people's visual language evolved continuously, accurately, and in detail, capturing the dramatic changes in their daily lives. The profound adaptation of daily life was an incredibly complex and painful process of abandoning familiar, age-old standards of comfort. People stubbornly learned to strike a vital compromise between ancient traditions and the harsh, everyday necessity of physical survival. Every successfully implemented innovation was a desperate attempt to preserve independence amid total and exhausting scarcity. This high degree of mental flexibility allowed indigenous peoples to avoid disappearing without a trace in the merciless whirlwind of global historical change. The absolute impossibility of continuing traditional nomadism forced tribes to seek entirely new forms of stable economic activity. Many communities began a gradual and arduous transition to a sedentary lifestyle, establishing small permanent settlements. The careful selection of sites for such villages was determined by the availability of stable sources of fresh water and suitable fertile land. Instead of light, portable teepees, people began to build more substantial and durable dwellings out of processed wood and thick sod. Agriculture, which had previously played only a minor supporting role, became a new and reliable basis for survival for many groups. Native Americans adopted the useful practices of sedentary tribes and European settlers in the efficient cultivation of grains and various vegetables. Deep plowing of the hard prairie soil required the use of heavy steel plows and strong draft animals. This grueling daily labor fundamentally changed the familiar nomadic daily routine and the traditional division of roles within the family. Livestock raising became another vital alternative to the irretrievably lost resources of the wild. Keeping small herds of cows, sheep, and goats provided communities with a stable domestic source of meat, wool, and nutritious milk. The Indians mastered the skills of herders and cattle breeders incredibly quickly, effectively leveraging their vast experience with riding horses. Small, well-tended herds became a new, solid foundation of economic stability for many families who had transitioned to a sedentary lifestyle. The difficult transition to a sedentary lifestyle required the creation of entirely new systems for the reliable storage and processing of harvested crops. Sturdy wooden granaries and deep earthen cellars appeared, capable of holding grain and vegetable supplies for the entire long winter. Native American women actively mastered the techniques of proper preservation and drying of new, previously unfamiliar types of cultivated foods. Daily life became more complex, requiring careful planning of the household for several lean years ahead. Temporary labor became a harsh reality for many young people desperately seeking ways to feed their families. Native Americans were hired as excellent trackers, interpreters, or simply hardy laborers for large-scale railroad construction. This hard labor introduced them to a harsh industrial culture and the general workings of the new monetary macroeconomy. Their honestly earned wages were regularly sent back to their communities, providing significant support for sustaining the economy during a difficult transitional period. The radical change in the economic base led to an inevitable, profound transformation of social relations within the Native American tribes themselves. The influence of celebrated military leaders gradually waned, giving way to those who knew how to run a profitable and successful economy. A person's social status was now determined by the size of their cultivated fields, the number of livestock they owned, and their business acumen. This often sparked internal conflicts between ardent supporters of old traditions and pragmatic adherents of the new way of life. The education of young people also took on entirely new forms, strictly meeting the direct demands of the changed industrial era. The first schools appeared where Native American children were taught basic literacy, arithmetic, and the fundamentals of modern commercial agriculture. The older generation understood perfectly well that without this specific knowledge, survival in the new harsh world would be absolutely impossible. At the same time, the wise elders tried to preserve the oral transmission of their native language and ancient legends during long evenings by the hearth. The final transition to a sedentary lifestyle and fundamentally new types of labor was a true revolution in the lives of the formerly free nomads. They demonstrated an incredible ability to learn quickly and integrate into a market economic system that was completely foreign to them. Despite enormous territorial losses, the tribes were able to lay a solid foundation for their future autonomous existence. This invaluable experience became a strong foundation for the formation of modern Native American communities in the tumultuous 20th century. Against the backdrop of colossal economic and geographical changes, the issue of preserving cultural identity became paramount for all surviving tribes. The loss of the traditional free way of life posed a serious threat of the complete dissolution of indigenous peoples into the new aggressive dominant culture. Wise elders understood that physical and biological survival was utterly meaningless without preserving the unique spirit of their people. An invisible yet incredibly tenacious struggle began to preserve their native language, ancient rituals, and collective historical memory. Ancient oral traditions became the most vital tool available for directly passing on knowledge to the new, younger generations. On quiet evenings, the elders told the children thrilling stories of great expeditions, national heroes of the past, and the proper order of the world. These tales and profound legends carried the incredibly important moral and philosophical essence of the entire nomadic culture. They helped the youth of today understand their deep roots and fully realize their inseparable connection to an ancient, great people. Rhythmic music and group dances served as the most powerful unifying factor for all geographically scattered communities. The steady beat of the drums and traditional throat singing helped people overcome their accumulated despair and feel their strength once again. Entirely new forms of communal celebrations emerged, such as powwows, where representatives of different tribes could openly communicate and exchange experiences. These large-scale festivals became a vivid showcase of a surviving culture and an excellent way to proudly demonstrate it to the outside world. Traditional folk crafts, even after becoming a mere source of income, retain their deep symbolic meaning forever. Every embroidered pattern on beaded clothing or every intricate wood carving carried an encrypted historical message. Experienced artisans poured their whole souls into their creations, viewing this painstaking labor as the highest form of meditation and a connection to the past. This applied art has become a unique and reliable bridge between the irretrievably bygone era of the Great Plains and the modern age that has dawned. The reverence for the natural world, ingrained by millennia of nomadic life, remained entirely unchanged in the philosophy of the indigenous peoples. The earth was still perceived as a single, vast living organism, demanding the deepest respect and incredibly careful treatment. The new settlers' consumerist, pragmatic approach to natural resources provoked deep, sincere incomprehension and sharp rejection among the Native Americans. This unique ecological ethic has forever become one of the most defining characteristics of their national mentality. Their Native American language became the most important and reliable bastion of defense against complete cultural and linguistic assimilation. Despite mandatory education in the New English language schools, people continued to speak the ancient dialects of the Lakota, Cheyenne, or Comanche at home. The emergence of a specialized writing system based on the familiar Latin alphabet made it possible to reliably record linguistic norms and compile dictionaries. This ancient language preserved a completely unique way of perceiving the world, one that is utterly inaccessible to direct translation. Gradually, a clear collective understanding emerged of the need to establish their own legal institutions to protect their violated rights. The very first Native American political organizations and independent newspapers emerged, boldly defending the interests of indigenous peoples in the political arena. Educated Native American intellectuals began independently recording the history of their tribes, creating a truthful alternative to official government chronicles. This long struggle for official recognition became a completely new battlefield for the descendants of the once great warriors. The history of the Great Plains tribes is by no means a story of defeat, but rather a story of incredible resilience and constant adaptation. Global changes to their environment destroyed their familiar material world, but they were completely unable to break their strong inner core. The ancient culture of these free nomadic peoples successfully transformed itself, fully preserving its uniqueness and profound millennia-old wisdom. Their rich historical legacy lives on, constituting the most integral and vital part of the history of the entire North American continent. We have come a long way in exploring how radical changes in access to resources reshaped the lives of the indigenous peoples of North America. This historical example shows that the true strength of a civilization lies in its ability to adapt and preserve its identity under the harshest conditions. The experience of the Great Plains Native Americans is a lesson in the value of traditions and the importance of treating the natural world with care. What other topics from the lives of the indigenous peoples of North America would you like to see in future videos? Be sure to share your suggestions in the comments and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new in-depth explorations of history.